Finally, the Senator, if I could do this, I know as part of standing on this floor, you're not standing here over, words and draft legislation. You're standing here because of people. And I sat with you and we talked about people in your community who had been affected. I would love to tell you the story about just one Virginian, if I could. And then I would love to have you comment on the story that I'm going to tell you. And I could tell a lot of stories and a lot of different people that I could, but one just epitomizes to me so plainly this challenge, and it's a story of a man named Liviu Librescu. Liviu Librescu was one of the people killed at Virginia Tech. He was a professor of aerospace engineering. He was an amazing professor. And on April 16, 2007, when Sung-Wi Cho came into Norris Hall and started shooting people, he stood in front of the door and he told his engineering students to try to get out of the window so that they would be safe. And he blocked the door, and Sung-Wi Cho was shooting bullets through the door, and he kept saying, "Hurry, hurry, hurry," until the last breath he took, he told students to hurry, and everyone in his class got out the window, except one other student, Mina Panchal, who stayed behind and encouraged others to go ahead of him. And Professor Librescu was one of the 32 killed that day, but here's the amazing thing about Liviu Librescu that I just find myself continuing to contemplate. Liviu Librescu was 76 years old. He was born in the 1930s as a Jew in Romania. And when Hitler and the Nazis started to sweep across Europe, he and his family were put into labor camps and concentration camps. But this amazing survivor, who was a young boy and a teenager, survived the Holocaust. Most of his family was killed. He survived the Holocaust. And now he's a teenager with a lot of his family gone. And a lot of people who had been through that experience in Romania decided to leave. They were so shattered. But this is my home. My family's gone. This is my home. I'm going to stay in Romania. Then the Soviet Union took over Romania. And they asked that he renounces Judaism. And he wouldn't do it. And then they asked that he pledge allegiance to the Communist Party, and he wouldn't do it. And so he had gotten a PhD. He was a well-recognized engineer, but suddenly, first, you can't travel to go to academic conferences, and then second, you're going to lose your job. And this Holocaust survivor now has to live under Soviet communism and be persecuted, but he wouldn't give up his faith, and he wouldn't give up his moral integrity. And he kept trying for a better life. And finally, in 1977, when he was past 40, he was allowed to emigrate to Israel. And he moved to Israel. And that had been his dream. And he was a teacher in Israel. In 1985, he got a one-year teaching fellowship at Virginia Tech in Blacksburg to come teach engineering. And he came in 1985 for a one-year fellowship, and he kept renewing it year after year after year because he found in Virginia, he found in America, he found in Blacksburg a community that he loved and a community that he cared about. So somebody who survived the Holocaust of the Nazis, who survived the Soviet oppression of his native land, couldn't survive the Holocaust of gun violence in this country. And there's one more thing about Liviu Librescu, and it's about the day that he was killed, because it was a very different day for him than it was for his students. It was a Monday. It was April 16, 2007, but that day was a special day in the Jewish faith for somebody who was Jewish. It's Yom HaShoah, from sundown on the 15th of April, 2007, till sundown on April 16. It's the day to remember the Holocaust. And Jews worldwide and people who care about Judaism worldwide, it's a day to remember the Holocaust. And when you remember the Holocaust, well, it's one thing to reflect upon it, but it's another thing to reflect upon it as a Holocaust survivor. And what you reflect upon is the perpetrators and the gravity of the tragedy that they perpetrated. And you reflect upon the victims who lost their lives, and you reflect upon the survivors. And you reflect upon the heroes. And you also reflect upon the bystanders. You also reflect upon the bystanders. And so while the students who went into that class on the morning of April 16th, they weren't thinking about Yom HaShoah, Liviu Librescu was. And I've got to believe when that shooting started on this day where he's thinking about what he's been through, then he's faced with an existential, am I going to be a perpetrator? Am I going to be a victim? Am I going to be a survivor? Am I going to be a bystander? I'm going to be a hero. And he chose to be a hero. And he lost his life. He chose to be a hero. And he lost his life. Would I do that? Would I stand in front of a door and block it and take bullets and tell my students to get out the window? Would I do that? I cannot honestly stand here and say that I would. I can't say that I would have the courage of Liviu Librescu. He was a hero. I can't say I'd be a hero. But in this body, we don't have to be heroes. We just have to not be bystanders. We've been bystanders in this body. We've been bystanders in this nation as this carnage of gun violence has gone from one tragedy to the next. To cast a vote, that's not heroic. To stand up and say, we can be safer tomorrow, we can protect people's lives, that's not heroic. That's just saying, I will not be a bystander. And that's all we have to do. Stop being bystanders.